In the heavily restricted archives of the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, there is a collection of Sumerian and Akkadian artifacts that are rarely, if ever, put on public display. Among them is a seemingly unremarkable clay cylinder seal catalogued as VA243. For decades, traditional historians have claimed this cylinder simply depicts a generic agricultural scene, a god handing a plough to a human. But in the late 20th century, astronomers looked closely at the upper left corner of the seal and realized the historians were completely wrong. Carved into the clay is a precise diagram of our solar system. It shows the sun in the center, surrounded by planets in their correct proportional orbits. It is an impossible level of astronomical knowledge for a civilization that existed 5,000 years ago. But that is not the terrifying part. The terrifying part is that the Sumerian map of our solar system does not match ours. It shows an extra planet. If you are finding this channel for the first time, and the idea that our history has been suppressed and rewritten fascinates you, hit the subscribe button right now. Every week, we investigate the archaeological anomalies and cosmic mysteries that mainstream science refuses to acknowledge. What we are exploring today doesn't just rewrite human history, it rewrites the history of our entire solar system. When researchers first analysed cylinder seal VA243, the academic establishment dismissed the extra planet as a mistake. They claimed the Sumerians, lacking telescopes, simply misunderstood the night sky and drew a random celestial body between Mars and Jupiter. Mainstream astronomy insisted that the space between Mars and Jupiter is, and has always been, nothing more than the Asteroid Belt, a ring of dead rocks and debris that failed to form into a planet billions of years ago. It was a neat, comforting explanation, but physics and mathematics do not agree with the mainstream narrative, and to understand why the Sumerian tablet is absolutely accurate, you have to understand a suppressed piece of astrophysics known as the Titius-Bode law. In the 18th century, astronomers Johann Titius and Johann Bode discovered a mathematical formula that perfectly predicted the spacing of the planets in our solar system. The universe is not random, it operates on precise mathematical harmony. The Titius-Bode equation flawlessly predicted the distance of Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn from the Sun. When Uranus was discovered later, it fit the mathematical equation perfectly. But there was a glaring, massive problem. The mathematical formula dictated that there had to be a planet sitting precisely between Mars and Jupiter. The math demanded it. The gravitational resonance of the solar system required it. But when astronomers looked through their telescopes, they didn't find a planet. They found a cosmic crime scene. They found millions of shattered, jagged fragments of rock and ice tumbling through the dark. The Asteroid Belt. For the last century, universities have taught us that the Asteroid Belt is just leftover construction material from the birth of the solar system, rocks that simply never came together. But in the last decade, modern space probes have completely destroyed that theory. In 2015, NASA's Dawn spacecraft arrived at Ceres, the largest object in the asteroid belt. What Dawn discovered sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Ceres wasn't just a dead rock. It possessed a differentiated interior, meaning it has a distinct core, a mantle, and a crust. Furthermore, Dawn detected massive amounts of frozen water, ammonia, and highly complex organic compounds on its surface. Meteorites that fall to Earth from the asteroid belt tell an even more disturbing story. Isotopic analysis of these meteorites reveals that they contain minerals that can only form in the presence of massive oceans of liquid water and extreme subterranean heat. Let that sink in. You cannot have differentiated cores, massive oceans, and complex organic compounds on scattered space rubble. These chemical signatures can only exist if those rocks were once part of a single, massive, geologically active planet. A planet with a hot core, tectonic plates, and a deep planetary ocean. Modern astrophysics is slowly, quietly coming to the realization that a massive water-bearing planet used to exist between Mars and Jupiter, and something violently blew it apart. Mainstream science suggests it happened billions of years ago, in a random celestial collision. But the Sumerian texts, translated from dozens of corresponding tablets, tell a completely different story. They say the planet was called Tiamat, and they say its destruction was not an accident, it was an execution. According to the translation of the Enuma Elish, often mischaracterized as a simple creation myth, Tiamat was a massive, luminous water monster, a poetic description of a super-Earth covered entirely by deep, glowing oceans. Tiamat was not a dead world. The tablets describe it as teeming with biological life, a crown jewel of the early solar system. But Tiamat became the center of a catastrophic cosmic conflict. The Sumerian law dictates that the Anunnaki, the advanced beings who managed our solar system, were not a peaceful, unified species. They were a fiercely hierarchical, militarized empire prone to devastating political fractures. Enki, the master geneticist and creator, valued the proliferation of life and complex biological ecosystems, but his brother Enlil, the supreme military commander, valued absolute order, control, and total submission to the authority of the Anunnaki homeworld. The texts hint that Tiamat was either an early genetic experiment that grew beyond Anunnaki control, or it was a stronghold for a rebellious faction that refused to bow to Enlil's draconian rule. Whatever biological or political threat Tiamat posed, Enlil deemed it unacceptable. The Supreme Commander issued an order that defies our modern comprehension of warfare. He ordered the complete eradication of the planet. But how do you destroy an entire super-Earth? Our modern civilization possesses thousands of nuclear weapons, but even if we detonated all of them simultaneously, we would only scorch the surface of the Earth. We could never shatter the actual planet into millions of pieces. To obliterate a planetary sphere, you must overcome its gravitational binding energy. It requires an amount of force so incomprehensible that it borders on the divine. The Sumerian tablets describe the weapon Enlil authorized. They called it the Wind of Severing, or the Cleaver of Skies. When 19th century scholars first translated these words, they assumed it was a metaphor for a massive thunderstorm or a hurricane. But when you apply modern theoretical physics to the Sumerian descriptions, a terrifying reality emerges. The text describes the weapon not as a bomb of fire, but as an invisible force that tore the waters from the stone and crushed the heart of the world from the inside out. It states that the weapon was fired from a passing celestial chariot, and when it struck Tiamat, the planet did not immediately explode. Instead, it groaned in agony, its oceans boiling into the vacuum of space, before the world fractured into pieces. This is an impossibly accurate description of a localized gravity shear weapon, a technology that manipulates the fabric of space-time itself. If an incredibly advanced civilization wanted to destroy a planet, they wouldn't use explosives. They would project a focused beam of extreme gravitational density directly into the planet's core. By artificially accelerating the rotational speed of the planet's molten iron core while simultaneously halting the rotation of its crust, the sheer torsion would tear the planet apart from the inside. The tectonic plates would shatter, the mantle would erupt outward, and the gravitational binding of the world would fail. This explains why the asteroid belt looks the way it does today. If two planets had simply collided, as mainstream science suggests, the debris would have eventually coalesced back into a new planet over millions of years. But a gravity shear weapon would fundamentally disrupt the local gravitational field, creating an orbital dead zone where the fragments are permanently repelled from one another, tumbling in a chaotic ring of death for eternity. The cylinder seal in Berlin is not a mistake. The Sumerians drew exactly what they were taught by the survivors of this cosmic war. They drew the solar system as it existed before Enlil pulled the trigger. They mapped Tiamat in all its glory because the Anunnaki wanted humanity to know what happens to a world that defies the Supreme Commander. The asteroid belt is not a natural phenomenon. It is a mass grave. It is a permanent physical monument to the absolute, terrifying power of the Anunnaki. But the destruction of Tiamat is only the beginning of this suppressed narrative. When a planet that size is shattered into millions of pieces, the debris doesn't just politely stay in its orbit. A cosmic shotgun blast of rock, ice, and boiling water exploded outward across the solar system, and Earth was directly in the crossfire. The Sumerian texts describe what happened next, and it perfectly aligns with the most violent, unexplained anomalies in Earth's geological record. The destruction of Tiamat wasn't just the end of a world, it was the violent, chaotic genesis of Earth as we know it today, and it reveals a terrifying truth about why our planet is so unique, why our oceans are so deep, and why Enki chose Earth to be the ultimate biological sanctuary. When Tiamat shattered, the resulting shockwave of gravitational displacement and hypervelocity debris fundamentally altered the architecture of the inner solar system. Mainstream astrophysics refers to a period in Earth's ancient past known as the Late Heavy Bombardment, an era when our planet was mercilessly hammered by millions of asteroids and comets. Modern science insists this was just a random phase of the early solar system settling into orbit, but the Sumerian texts, cross-referenced with modern isotopic chemistry, reveal that the Late Heavy Bombardment wasn't a natural phase, it was the shrapnel from Enlil's weapon. Earth, sitting in its current orbit, was directly in the path of the expanding debris field, but Earth was not the lush blue world we know today. According to the earliest Anunnaki records, Earth was originally a dry, highly volcanic rock, possessing a toxic atmosphere and very little surface water. So where did our massive oceans come from? Mainstream science theorizes that millions of ice-bearing comets slowly delivered water to Earth over billions of years, but the mathematical probability of enough comets hitting Earth to fill the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans is highly disputed. The Sumerian epic of creation provides a shocking alternative explanation that neatly solves the geological math. The text states that when Tiamat, the great water monster, was cleaved in two, one half of the planet was shattered into the hammered bracelet, the Sumerian term for the asteroid belt, but the other half of Tiamat, the massive intact hemisphere containing the bulk of its deep planetary oceans, was violently knocked out of its orbit. The text describes this massive, waterlogged celestial body careening through the solar system until it collided with the young, dry Earth. This wasn't a world-ending collision, it was a planetary merger. The remaining half of Tiamat struck Earth at a glancing angle. The sheer kinetic force of the impact gouged out the massive depression that is now the Pacific Basin, while transferring trillions of tons of Tiamat's alien water, organic compounds and atmospheric gases onto our planet. We did not slowly accumulate our oceans, we inherited the bleeding, liquid heart of a destroyed world. This completely redefines the origin of biological life on Earth. If Tiamat was a world teeming with biological ecosystems, as the texts suggest, then its collision with Earth was the ultimate panspermia event. The building blocks of life, the complex proteins, the amino acids, and perhaps even dormant microbial organisms, did not spontaneously generate in Earth's volcanic mud. They survived the impact. They were seeded here by the dying breath of Tiamat. This is why Enki, the master geneticist, chose Earth as his ultimate laboratory. He recognized that the biological essence of Tiamat had survived the destruction, waiting in the new oceans to be cultivated, manipulated, and evolved. But the impact of Tiamat's severed half did more than just deliver water. It created a permanent physical anomaly that continues to baffle modern scientists, and it involves the very crust beneath our feet. If you look at a topographical map of the Earth with the oceans drained, our planet looks like a damaged apple with a massive chunk bitten out of one side. The continental crust, the thick granite foundation that forms the continents of Eurasia, Africa, and the Americas, covers less than half of the planet. The rest is the Pacific Basin, where the crust is shockingly thin, composed of heavy basalt rather than granite. Modern geology calls this continental drift and plate tectonics, struggling to explain why the thick granite crust is clustered on one side of the globe. The Sumerian account perfectly explains this physical impossibility. The impact of Tiamat's remnant sheared off half of Earth's original primordial crust, pushing the remaining continental landmasses together onto one side of the planet. The wound left behind, the massive, thin-crusted Pacific Basin, was instantly filled by the torrential transfer of Tiamat's oceans. Our planet is literally a chimera. The land we walk on is original Earth. The deep oceans we sail upon are the ghost of Tiamat, and there is one more celestial anomaly born from this cosmic violence, an anomaly so massive it dominates our night sky. When the remnant of Tiamat struck Earth, the kinetic energy ejected millions of tons of molten rock, granite, and vaporized water into Earth's orbit. Over time, this massive ring of debris coalesced and cooled, forming a perfectly spherical satellite. The Moon. Mainstream science finally adopted a similar theory in the 1970s, calling it the giant impact hypothesis. They admit that a Mars-sized object hit Earth and created the Moon from the debris. They call this hypothetical object Theia, but they insist it was a random dead rock. The Sumerians wrote about the exact same impact 5,000 years earlier, but they knew the object wasn't a random rock. It was the shattered half of a vibrant, watery world executed by the supreme commander of the Anunnaki. When we look up at the Moon, we are not just looking at a beautiful celestial body, we are looking at the ash of a cosmic war. The Moon is literally made from the pulverized bones of Earth and the shattered remains of Tiamat. But the cylinder seal VA243, sitting quietly in Berlin, holds one final secret, a detail that pushes this ancient narrative from a fascinating historical mystery into a terrifying modern warning. Look again at the planetary map carved into the clay. It shows the Sun in the center, it shows the planets in their proportional orbits, it shows the space where Tiamat used to be, but the map also shows one additional celestial body, located far out on the extreme edge of the solar system, past Pluto, entering from an elliptical angle. The Sumerians called it Nibiru, the planet of crossing, the home world of the Anunnaki. Mainstream astronomy has mocked the idea of Nibiru for decades. They dismissed it as a myth, a translation error by rogue linguists. But in 2016, researchers at the California Institute of Technology, one of the most prestigious astrophysical institutions on Earth, published a peer-reviewed paper that shocked the scientific world by observing the strange clustered orbits of icy bodies in the extreme outer solar system, the Kuiper Belt. The Caltech team mathematically proved that a massive, unseen planet is lurking in the dark. They called it Planet 9. According to their mathematical models, Planet 9 is roughly 10 times the mass of Earth and follows a highly elliptical, elongated orbit that takes between 10,000 and 20,000 years to complete. It plunges deep into the outer void before swinging back into the inner solar system. This is the exact orbital profile the Sumerians described for Nibiru 5 millennia ago. They knew its size, they knew its trajectory, and most importantly, they knew its schedule. The Sumerian texts are extremely clear about the catastrophic effects of Nibiru's return. The Anunnaki homeworld does not have to physically collide with Earth to cause a cataclysm. Its immense gravitational and electromagnetic field acts like a cosmic wrecking ball. When it crosses the orbital plane of the inner solar system, it drags a massive tail of iron oxide dust, charged particles, and asteroid debris with it. The texts describe previous passages of Nibiru as times of unimaginable terror. The sky turns a deep rusty red as the iron oxide dust enters the upper atmosphere. The immense gravitational pull warps the Earth's magnetic field, causing rapid pole shifts, unprecedented tectonic upheaval, and massive volcanic eruptions. The oceans, pulled by the alien gravity, surge over the continents in planet-wide tsunamis. If the Caltech mathematicians are right and Planet 9 is real, it completely validates the Sumerian cylinder seal. The ancient map wasn't just a recording of the past, it was a tracking chart. The Anunnaki provided this map to humanity so the priesthoods could calculate the cycles of destruction. We are currently living in an era of unprecedented, accelerating Earth changes. Mainstream science blames all of it on human activity, but independent geophysicists are tracking anomalies that carbon emissions cannot explain. The Earth's magnetic poles are shifting at an exponentially accelerating rate. Deep-sea volcanic activity is heating the oceans from the bottom up. Strange, metallic red dust has been detected in the upper atmosphere by high-altitude weather balloons. The gravitational effects of the approaching body are already stretching the fabric of our inner solar system. The extreme weather, the tectonic instability, the shifts in the magnetic field, these are not the disease, they are the symptoms. The patient is reacting to the massive gravitational ghost approaching from the deep dark. When Enlil authorized the destruction of Tiamat with the gravity shear weapon, he proved that the Anunnaki view planets as expendable. They manipulate celestial bodies the way we manipulate chess pieces. The shattered remains of the Asteroid Belt serve as a permanent warning to any species that believes it has achieved autonomy. Enki may have seeded Earth with the surviving biology of Tiamat, and he may have hidden the keys to our evolution in our DNA, but Enlil still commands the orbital high ground. The Anunnaki did not abandon us. They simply left us on a very long, very specific timer. We are sitting on a planet made from the wreckage of a cosmic execution, staring up at a moon made of planetary shrapnel, waiting for the elliptical return of the world that orchestrated the violence. The cylinder seal VA-243 is not just an artifact, it is an indictment. It is the proof that our solar system is a crime scene, and the architects of that crime are on their way back. If this analysis of the suppressed astronomical knowledge of the Sumerians has made you question the history you were taught, you are part of a growing awakening. The establishment cannot hide the math of the cosmos forever. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this information before the algorithm suppress it. Because the sky is changing, the magnetic field is slipping, and the planet of crossing is already on the map. As the Caltech mathematics regarding Planet 9 continue to perfectly align with the Sumerian descriptions of Nibiru, a terrifying realization is beginning to dawn on independent researchers. If the ancient cylinder seal VA-243 is a literal map, and the destruction of Tiamat was a literal event, then the return of the Anunnaki homeworld is not a matter of mythology, it is a matter of orbital mechanics, and orbital mechanics run on a merciless, predictable clock. But the Sumerian texts provide an even darker layer to this impending cosmic intersection. The return of Nibiru is not just a destructive natural event caused by a passing gravitational field. According to the highly suppressed translations of the Era Epos, a Babylonia-Assyrian text derived from older Sumerian sources, the passage of Nibiru is an administrative event. It is an inspection, and the Anunnaki do not arrive empty-handed. When Nibiru reaches its perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, it crosses the orbital path of the Asteroid Belt, the shattered remains of Tiamat. This is not a coincidence. The Anunnaki engineered this specific orbital trajectory. The text describes a process known as the harvest of the broken crown. Remember the metallurgical analysis of the asteroids we discussed earlier? The meteorites that fall to Earth from the belt are incredibly rich in heavy metals, specifically gold, platinum, and rare earth elements that were concentrated in Tiamat's core. Mainstream science acknowledges that the asteroid belt contains more accessible mineral wealth than the entire crust of the Earth. NASA and private space companies are currently spending billions researching how to mine these asteroids, but the Anunnaki have been mining them for hundreds of thousands of years. The Era Epos describes how the immense gravitational pull of Nibiru acts like a cosmic dragnet as it passes through the debris field. It pulls millions of tons of heavy metal-rich asteroids into its own orbital wake. The Anunnaki don't need to send small mining ships to extract resources. They use the gravitational force of their entire planet to vacuum up the shattered core of Tiamat. This explains why Enlil destroyed the planet in the first place. The destruction of Tiamat wasn't just a political execution or a military victory, it was the ultimate brutal act of resource extraction. Tiamat's intact crust and deep oceans made accessing its heavy metals difficult and inefficient. By using the gravity shear weapon to shatter the planet, Enlil essentially cracked open the safe. He turned a vibrant, living world into an easily accessible floating quarry. This realization completely shatters the mainstream alternative theory about the Anunnaki. For decades, popular ancient astronaut theorists have claimed that the Anunnaki created humanity to mine gold in South Africa. While there is geological evidence of ancient, anomalous mining activity on Earth, the scale is mathematically insignificant. If an advanced alien civilization needed gold to repair their atmosphere, as the popular theory goes, they wouldn't rely on primitive humans with pickaxes digging in the dirt for trace amounts of ore. The Earth mining operation was a secondary, localized project, likely managed by lower-ranking Anunnaki officers, or e.g., the working-class gods, to supply their immediate needs while stationed here. The true galactic-scale resource extraction occurs in the asteroid belt. The shattered corpse of Tiamat is the real gold mine. So, if humanity was not primarily created to be a global mining workforce, what is our actual purpose? Why did Enki take the biological remnants of Tiamat, the survivors of the oceans that crashed into Earth, and splice them with hominid DNA to create us? The answer is found in the final, most heavily guarded secret of the Sumerian cuneiform collection. It is a concept that modern science is only now beginning to touch upon in the fields of quantum computing and theoretical physics. The Anunnaki did not just mine physical minerals, they mined consciousness. In the ancient texts, human beings are repeatedly referred to as the Lulu Amalu, the primitive workers, but the literal translation of the cuneiform roots is much more specific. It translates closer to the mixed ones who generate the charge. Modern neurocardiology has proven that the human heart generates an electromagnetic field roughly 60 times greater in amplitude than the brain. Our central nervous system is a continuous, highly complex bioelectrical circuit. When human beings experience intense emotion, specifically fear, trauma, awe, or worship, our bodies emit massive spikes of extremely low-frequency ELF radiation. We are essentially biological batteries, constantly broadcasting scalar waves into the Earth's atmosphere. The Anunnaki architecture on Earth, the massive ziggurats, the step pyramids, the megalithic stone circles, were not temples built by humans to worship the gods. They were atmospheric resonance chambers built for humans, designed to collect, amplify, and transmit the electromagnetic frequencies generated by human consciousness. The priests didn't conduct sacrifices and massive rituals just to appease angry deities. They were generating a specific frequency of emotional trauma and awe to feed into the grid. Enlil destroyed Tiamat for its physical resources, but Enki created humanity to harvest a resource that cannot be mined from dead rock, the raw quantum energy of biological consciousness. This is why the Anunnaki allowed humanity to multiply despite Enlil's disgust for us. We are an agricultural crop. The Earth is not a prison, it is a farm, and the product being harvested is the frequency of our collective nervous system. When Nibiru makes its return crossing, it does not just harvest the physical rocks of the asteroid belt. The intense gravitational and magnetic disruption it causes on Earth, the pole shifts, the extreme weather, the red dust in the sky, creates an environment of absolute global terror. The entire human population of 8 billion people will simultaneously experience the ultimate emotional spike. The global bioelectrical field will surge to unprecedented levels. The ancient megaliths, which are currently dormant or operating at minimal capacity, will act as the terrestrial antennas, focusing and transmitting this massive surge of human consciousness upward, directly feeding the approaching Anunnaki fleet or the planetary grid of Nibiru itself. The destruction of Tiamat proves that the Anunnaki operate on a scale of ruthless efficiency that we cannot comprehend. They break planets to harvest their cores. They engineered a sentient species to harvest their terror. But there is a flaw in their system. A flaw that Enki secretly engineered into our DNA, and it is the only reason the global elite, the modern managers of the human farm, are currently in a state of absolute panic. The human nervous system was designed to emit frequencies of fear and subservience, but Enki left the 98% of our junk DNA intact. If human consciousness shifts out of fear and into a state of highly elevated unified awareness, the frequency we emit completely changes. We stop producing the low-level scalar waves the Anunnaki feed upon, and we begin to emit a high-frequency resonance that disrupts their collection grid. This is the true Great Awakening. It is not just a political realization or a spiritual movement. It is a biological rebellion. If enough humans elevate their consciousness, if we stop feeding the grid with our engineered terror and division, we effectively short-circuit the Anunnaki harvest. The resonance of a unified, fearless human species acting in concert would create an electromagnetic shield around the Earth, a frequency barrier that the incoming Anunnaki technology cannot penetrate without destroying the very crop they came to collect. The cylinder seal in Berlin shows us the physical map of the cosmic crime scene. It shows us the shattered ghost of Tiamat. It shows us the approaching trajectory of Nibiru. But the map is not a prophecy of inevitable doom. It is an instruction manual for our survival. The Anunnaki shattered a planet because it defied them. They will not hesitate to shatter our civilization if we fail to serve our purpose. The extreme weather anomalies, the magnetic shifts, the sudden surge in global chaos, this is the pressure building before the crossing. They want us terrified. They want us divided. They want the bioelectrical grid humming with fear, ready for the harvest. Our only defense is to understand our true history, to recognize the artificial nature of our reality, and to refuse to generate the frequency they demand. We are the children of the shattered world. We carry the water of Tiamat in our blood and the genetic genius of Enki in our cells. The planet of crossing is coming, and the sky will soon speak the truth that mainstream science has tried so desperately to hide. The gods are returning for their harvest. It is time we show them that the crop has evolved. If this deep dive into the true origins of our solar system and the suppressed purpose of humanity has changed the way you see the world, you cannot keep it to yourself. The algorithm is designed to keep you in fear and isolation. Break the frequency. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this truth with everyone who is ready to hear it. The crossing is near, and the awakening has already begun.